Yes.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Truth and Tarot Time. And I am super excited this week to introduce to you the beautiful Raya Elyse. Welcome, Raya. Uh,
Thank
Raya and I have just done swapsies, and we could talk for Britain and Canada. Raya is over the pond in Canada. And yeah, we can certainly talk. She is absolutely amazing. We met each other on Facebook. So I'm a big fan of Facebook. A lot of people say things about Facebook, but for me, you put the right energy in, and Raya is proof that you get the right energy back again. She's an intuitive channeler. She's done a channeling for me. She channels light language. And really interestingly, she does galactic astrology, which of course is two of my favorite topics rolled into one. So yeah, I'm flying high at the moment. Um, we're going to do a little reading. She's also, did I mention, a tarot card reader? So we're going to have so much fun because I do love, I mean, as we know, you don't have to be a tarot card reader to be on my Truth and Tarot Time podcast. But when you are, it just makes it a lot, a lot of fun. Okay. Let's dive straight in. The card on the bottom, we've got the Page of Cups. There we go. Pages are messengers. There's something new coming in. The cup, of course, is the love, the emotions, the intuition, the creativity. This basically is really good. It sums up the way we feel because we're new friends. So there's something new here. The fish represents the wisdom. Of course, there is wisdom in the heart. The cups represent heart. The heart is where the wisdom lies. And it's across the pond. Look, across the pond. So this is the perfect card for us, Freya. Okay, let's have a look at what we've. Oh my goodness me, we've got the judgment card, which of course is life purpose, aha moments, spiritual awakenings, and being called. Perfect. Waking up the dead. We've been talking about the service to humanity. You're being called to your service to humanity. And one of the reasons I love Rhea so much is because she is really rocking it for humanity. And I honor that in you, Rhea. So this is part of our life purpose is just this sharing of our gifts, sharing of our enthusiasm, our excitement, and the things that we love to do. So this is a life purpose card, which is saying basically use your gifts to raise your own frequency and to heal yourself, and then share them with other people to help raise the consciousness of the collective, I want to say. Here we go. We've got the
Mm.
Empress. Look at this. We've got another major arcana, very feminine. We've got the love here. I did a reading for Rhea, and it came up about the love. It was overwhelming, wasn't it? There was this energy of overwhelming love, and the need to channel that within, conscious areas in your life. Because it can feel overwhelming, can't it? This love. So this Venus sign to me is showing the love that you feel and that we feel in our relationships. So it's a very feminine, very luxurious card as well. Because what I want to say, oh, I haven't said this before about the Empress, so this is interesting. What I want to say is um, the Empress has the luxuries in life, but her luxuries are all free. As in, her luxuries are sitting in nature, breathing fresh air, having animals around her, having people that she can love, and being who she came here to be. And of course, we can't ignore the fact that she's a giving birth card. So if that isn't giving birth to little humans, it's giving birth to projects, creativity, things like this. So it's very beautiful. She's very fertile, and she's obviously very creative. And being able to express that is her luxury. That's what she views as a luxury. So it's really beautiful. Here we've got Three of Cups. This is really the energy that we've been with, isn't it, Raya? We've been very,
Yeah.
very Three of Cups, just enjoying each other's gifts, enjoying each other's company, with your tribe, celebrating life, celebrating the beauty of life. So this is amazing. And we've got another three,
Mm.
and we've got the Three of Pentacles as well. The Three of Pentacles, because this has been coming up a lot lately. Um, And I was learning something new about it. So yes, I've always said with the Three of Pentacles that it's about collaboration and that it's building on something. You're going to be rewarded for your achievements. You're going to be acknowledged for your achievements. And I've always said about threes, 1 + 1 = 3, that it's the magic number, that you need the well, one of these characters is a monk representing the masculine. The other character is a nun representing the feminine. This is what I learned recently, and it really resonated with me. Because from a quantum perspective, and of course, Lessons in Awakening brings that quantum science meets spirituality, because from a quantum perspective, the masculine projection, is the first point, and then you've got the feminine observation, or the feminine judgment of the observation, which actually allows the wave particle to come into form. So the guy on the step is the architect. He's holding the architectural plans, and he's actually building and creating from the harmony between the masculine and the feminine energies. It's like the seventh Hermetic principle, the principle of gender, where everything, not just humans and mammals, but everything is created from that harmony between the masculine and feminine energy, and then bringing it into form. So that's why the threes are such a creative energy. And especially towards, I always see the Three of Pentacles as a stepping stone, a relevant, significant stepping stone on your life's journey. So yes, but the way to get there is through joy and love, and purpose. So
Mm.
it's beautiful. And the last card, we've got the Ace of Swords. Oh my God, this is such a clear and positive message, isn't it? The Ace of Swords, communication, new ideas, new inspiration, new ways of thinking, new communication, channeling. If there was one card that
Mm.
represented channeling, it would be this one. Don't you agree, Raya?
Yes, totally.
Brilliant. So what do you make of those cards?
Oh wow. Yeah, this is so interesting. The quantum interpretations that can be taken from the cards, where there's multiple meanings and they all are valid and relevant and um applicable to not only like the conversation we just had, but of the major themes we've been discussing around, purpose and that sort of thing. Yeah, the first card, the page of cups there, really, really, really cool. Like a lot of inner child healing has been occurring within us and within the collective, where we begin to learn to reparent ourselves, reparent, repattern, create new patterns based on clearing the old scripts, and then coming into new levels of love and acceptance within ourselves, and a new level of belonging that is, wafted outwards and emanated outwards, and then begins to change a reality. Wherein there was a time recently where I I was upset with the level of kind of meanness I was, or disrespect I was getting in clients, and the reflection of that was that my inner dialogue needed to change. I needed to be nicer to myself. It was reflecting the meanness I was being to myself, which was a reflection of my very highly critical childhood, very, very highly critical. So it takes, a lot of coming into the self. For me, it was a lot of mirror work. I sat with myself in the mirror and said the things to myself and held my eye contact, and I could see where, parts were resisting, or where parts were brought up emotions, and kind of just hold that, you know but to the ocean energy of the uh cups is really gorgeous there too. Uh the in traditional Chinese medicine, the yang water, the oceans of consciousness, the collective unconscious. I feel like we're all having a reawakening to retrieve abandoned aspects of the self lost in childhood. The soul retrieval, the collective soul retrieval, wherein parts of us that didn't fit into the patriarchal, culture were kind of cut off and left behind, but now we're retrieving that, which we're retrieving new life force, and with that comes, a whole bunch of different gifts and blessings, and that we could do things we forgot we could do, whether that's the returning of psychic gifts coming online in a new way, such as animal communication, because he's got that cool fish in that cup, and it's funny because I was just having a discussion with someone around communicating with ETs, and part of what drew me to develop my own channeling was, I could very easily speak uh, with angels and galactics that came very, very easily to me. And then I decided to learn to channel, well, then I learned mediumships, which is a bit of a different octave on the same spectrum, and then animal communication, and then plant communication. And I wanted to be able to talk to everything and everyone, partly because I'm Gemini. and but also because it's what I've learned too is that Earth as a living library has galactic representations of all the different star races and star species. So a lot of the animals and flora and fauna, they're from elsewhere also, where some of the animals are dominant species on their own planet. So when we learn to animal communicate here, which might come more naturally to people who are more earthly based in their consciousness, it's the same technique in learning to how to not anthropomorphize in conversation, where we have to set aside our kind of species biases or the way we look at things to see things in a whole new light. And then from there, more comes. And for me, the return of silliness, the hat that's worn by the Page of Cups there, it kind of looks like a jellyfish. And meditating on the expansion of human consciousness, we expand through like contraction and expansion. Oh, this great billowing. So it brings us into greater rhythms and the return of joy. The Syrian energy there too is really cool because, yeah, the Syrian, we were just talking about the Dogon and the connection with the galactic astrology and the Sirius placements, the 13 degrees Cancer for the Sirius A, I believe. Um, but we go into the Judgment Awakening card, where that is Archangel Gabriel is what I was taught. The playing the trumpets, creating a new tone. The sound healing is very, very Syrian. And Archangel Gabriel is a royal fixed star, is Pisces, I believe 3 degrees Pisces, and that's been very, very highly activated in the astrology lately. Previously in the nodes, as we've been healing the age of Pisces, we've been healing the self-sacrificing services we've been doing when we've been caretaking the collective, but killing ourselves doing it, or people pleasing for me, or like taking on too much, that sort of thing. We're rewriting that, where now we get to serve from a place of joy, where we're holding the new energy, and that in itself changes everything. That in itself renders the old patterns obsolete, creating the new structures. And that is how, the the beginning of the formation of the new paradigm within the structural dynamics of creation. So yes, calling into new aliveness, how it's a communal card too. Yeah, the
Calling
calling, how
into
it's a
new
communal
life,
card. Yeah, exactly. Rebirthing. When you were talking about birthing there, I was like, birthing a paradigm, man.
giving
And
birth
yeah,
to the new earth, or giving birth to
exactly,
heaven on earth, I usually
exactly,
say.
exactly. Oh man, and you and I are very Venusian. We've got that motherly energy. Your Venus is in Libra, and I've got Libra rising. Libra
Okay.
has some galactic correspondences around the 22 to 24-degree mark. I can't remember specifically. It corresponds to Arcturian and Boots constellation, and the not a royal fixed star, but a very important fixed star on my ascendant is Spica, and that's a
Ah.
very uh, very beautiful quality of blue plasmic light uh, that brings in it about a specific quality of healing that I can't quite pronounce, but I'm calling it in to be felt. Toriyama Oya Karamayesha Oro Ta Amaye Kiyama Urtukatayesha Tsaratata Kiyama Narana. It's very innocent. Kurumaro to Koi Aya Samaya Satsa, but it's not very comfortable in the spotlight, including me. But yeah, the Empress is the Great Mother, bringing into the reparenting aspects too, the remothering, the re-nurturing, coming into a right relationship with all of creation. The Empress is connected with the field of grains series, Demeter, the grains, how we are fed, how we're eating, and that. Um, when we meditate on that and we take into consideration the um, the poisoning of the grains, right? That's pretty much a direct assault on the mother goddess, the grain goddesses. So to come into great reverence with what we feed, what we grow, how we produce, bringing back crop rotation, bringing back permaculture, that sort of thing will bring us back into the right relationship with the earth. And that I've been told by my guides very reassuringly that that won't take that much time at all. If we noticed with, the pause that was taken in COVID, lots of stuff, without all the traffic and the bumble and the blah, 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 stuff started, clearing up, started growing back. You know what I mean? Like boom, like the growth happens. So it's not unattainable to believe that we can very easily and effortlessly bring about an ecological repair that is and will be happening in accordance to the age of Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius, and North Node in Aquarius. It's happening right now. The Aquarian template also corresponding to the community energy in the cards of the judgment card and the next threes that are happening here. Yeah, Empress being three, then we have 333. So that's a very, very beautiful energy and
Oh,
connecting
yes,
that
I
with
hadn't
nature.
realized, of course. She's a three as well. I
Yeah.
realized the two threes, but now I'm realizing 333. That makes me excited as
Ding,
well.
ding, 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 ding. Yeah, yeah. And that, to me, that feels a lot like the Christ consciousness energy and the awakening that's been occurring through the Christ consciousness energy. Um, all of the different energies, as I can view them, look like different grid patterns on the earth corresponding to ley lines or the energetic grids around the earth. And to me, the energetic grid for the Christ consciousness is very, very golden, and it looks to me like a stelliated dodecahedron. So the dodecahedron has the 12 sides, and then the but it's pointillated, so it's stelliated, and that is growing in strength to make it easier for people to wake up, to make it easier for people to access the template of uh, divinity that is accessible, and that is what too is part of the building blocks of the new heart template and the new community template and the new paradigm template. Yeah, how to collaborate, uh, collaboration over competition from a joyful place, from a place that doesn't deplete or siphon or overextend, where it's in balance. Because if we think of like relational
Hmm.
dynamics, it's either reflecting through the words of the Pleiadians through Wendy Kennedy, either a suppression of divine light or an overexpression. So when we come into balance with that, and then balance the opposites through the masculine and the feminine in the energy
Which is
body,
what
that
I
looks
was
like,
saying here. Yeah,
yeah,
it's so
exactly,
relevant.
totally. And so yeah, in the energy body it looks like we've got the beautiful Sushumna, central column, and the Ida and Pingala, the two weaving snakes. And to me, in meditation, I saw the weaving snakes, the masculine and the feminine, corresponding to come into this center point in a Hieros Gamos. And through that is the 0 point. Through that is the great neutrality, and the quantum field is accessed, and where the new templates and grids just open up. So each energy center, blossom, blossom, blossom,
Wow.
blossom. Yeah. Beautiful. This
It
is a lot of fun.
is. I mean, the thing is, though, Raya, you're so knowledgeable. You're bringing in stuff from everywhere, and
Yeah.
your enthusiasm and your passion for what you're sharing is just infectious. It's amazing. Have you finished with the threes? Do you want? Should we go on to this one?
Oh yeah. Yeah. One last thing on the threes. I loved how like it was the water and the celebration and the joy and the connecting through joy and like the connecting, yeah, the trines in astrology is very flowing energy, natural flow that feels like connections that we make that just flow naturally because we have previously established relational dynamics from previous lifetimes, for example, or we're coming into true community, our vibe attracting our tribe, that sort of deal. But that is goes from water into grounded, where it's grounding, words grounding, pentacles, yeah, words actually applied. I find that's missing in the spiritual community sometimes, where there's like insights and you know uh beautiful channeled information, for example, where it's like wow, we could feel we're like on waves of bliss when we're interacting with that energy. But then when we take it into practical life, into daily matters, chop wood, carry water, some of it gets lost, or then we actually have to consciously be aware of where we're vibing from and then readjust and then maintain that frequency, because there's so many different things vying for our attention, vying for our focus. And the way we change this paradigm from the inside out is we hold the new frequency, as I spoke with the billowing out, with the blossoming, we hold that frequency, we dedicate to it, in reverence, right? We hold that, and then we hold it to the degree frequency has to be met by form. And from there, the molecules of creation rearrange themselves accordingly. And from there too, like an example with the ecological cleanup, a lot of what we see as pollution is an outward example of the kind of muck in our consciousness and the like judgments we throw at other people all the freaking time. you know um
It's all
we
a
are not in a
reflection. It's
exactly,
all a
yeah. So we
reflection.
we clean up here, we become conscientious of that. We decide to, what if we just, like, what if we just realize we don't know where that person's coming from or where they're going, what they're going through, and so we're not qualified to judge them, and we just relinquish that judgment and give them a little bit of peace and give them a little bit of grace. And from there, rather than to like being like you should do this, that, or the other thing, we just demonstrate what we want to see in the world and model that. And we go first and they say, hey, what's that person doing? They don't seem so affected by the turbulence. And then by demonstrating that, people start to get intrigued, and just their intrigue and their curiosity is like, hey, and then they start to make those adjustments in correspondence with their mirror neurons, inspired and whatnot. And then it just makes these tiny, 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 tiny tweaks, and more people join the party. More
Yeah.
people join that awakening. There's parts of awakening that suck with realizations, and you're like, and you can feel like, oh man, I'm realizing everything is blah blah blah. But there's all when we kind of process that, we can get to a point where we understand our creational capacity in correspondence to that. Be like, oh man, I'm actually a creator within my creation, and my creative potential is projecting outwards. So if I change what I'm projecting outwards, then the outwards will change,
But
and
also,
then
yeah,
oh,
exactly. And I
go ahead.
love what
Yeah.
you said about when we're judging people, we don't know what they've been through. But one of the things that
Hmm.
came to me is that, especially if we're judging someone negatively, one of my
Hmm.
favorite practices, which is something I talk about in Lessons in Awakening, is it's Byron Katie's work, but I've kind of
Mm.
condensed it. I've kind of like really I've just taken her one part of her work because I'm like, why not? I do the same with the emotion code. Let's just take
Yeah.
the really powerful bit, the life-changing bit. So when
Mm.
someone's triggering me or when I'm judging somebody negatively, then I say to myself, okay, give three adjectives to describe that person at the point if they've triggered me or if they've done something something specific that I'm judging them for. I'll say to myself, give three adjectives to describe that person in their, in that state that you're judging them about. And you can be as petty as you like. That's something that Byron Katie says. She says, be as petty as you like. And I love that bit. So I come out with three adjectives. And then comes the ouch. You just said, didn't you, that it can be quite
Mm.
icky, right? And so
Mm.
then comes the mirror. And I sit
Mm.
there, I'm like, where am I like that? Now,
Mm.
sometimes it can be really obvious where you're like that. Other times you might have to meditate on it. Sometimes the mirror is a magnifying mirror. So,
Mm.
although they may have demonstrated an extreme case of something, perhaps it's not such an extreme case within you, but it's clearly coming up for your acknowledgement, for your realization. And sometimes maybe you can't see it, but that's okay too, right? But it's just about being aware of the mirror side of things. I think that
Hmm.
really helps because it stops us from judging them. It
Hmm.
stops us from pointing fingers, and that's
Hmm.
where we get the fodder for the inner work. You talked about the
Hmm.
inner child healing as well, but the inner
Hmm.
work, because we may not be those three adjectives now at this stage in our life, but where were we? And
Hmm.
where have we stuck with that pattern somehow, in some way, with some people, maybe? Because I think we're different people with different people, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, totally.
So that
Yeah.
that kind of helps. But that usually brings on for me some kind of realization. And then
Mm.
what you're saying, what I love about what you're saying is, yeah, it's this bringing it into the heart. I get the message often to practice what I preach, which is
Yeah.
what you're saying, isn't
Me
it?
too.
It's like we've got to live it. We've got to be. I mean, it's overused, that phrase, "Be the change you want to see," but it's live
Hmm.
the change that you want to see.
Yeah.
Live the life that you want to see, not just the
Mm.
life that you want. It's live
Hmm.
the life that you want to see. If you the
Hmm.
example I often use, which is obviously a message for myself, but I'm always saying, I'd love to see organic fruit and vegetable shops on
Mm.
every street corner, like, rather than bars, um,
Mm.
and it's like, well, if you want to see that, Deborah, then you need to go and use the ones that are there. You need to
Yeah, yeah.
invest. You need to
Yeah.
invest. You need to stop selling your soul in the supermarket. And it's
Mm.
true. I mean, that's the message that I get. That's just the example that I use. But that example is in all areas of life, isn't it? And it's about running everything through the heart and not just
Mm.
the knowledge,
Exactly.
because that's what this card is saying. You've got the
Yeah.
wisdom from the fish, which the wisdom comes from the heart,
Mm.
and well, the wisdom is about combining the left brain knowledge and
Yeah.
the right brain heart.
Yeah,
So
another hero's gamos there in the brain synchronization, and then the coherence, the heart mind coherence, and then we'll be getting to eventually where we work with the heart mind gut coherence, and then probably different other versions of that. But it's and that in itself too, it's like there's that saying about like humans only use like 3% of their brains, and 98% are junk DNA, blah blah blah. That's all, of course, as we know, bullshit. But that also is like, stuff that has been atrophied or shut down because we've been encouraged, through schooling and through conditioning and through, belief systems inherited and whatnot, to kind of see through this very small aperture lens, and then nothing else beyond that is real. But as the awakening processes, is like it's expanding into new ways of thinking, new ways of being, new, holistic, where like one thing affects everything in the web of life. You can't touch this corner without rippling through the next. It's all like the butterfly, in, I think it's like the butterfly in Asia flaps its wings and it creates a, a, a circular cloud on the other side of the world, something like that. I'm not obviously paraphrasing that. But definitely with the reflection, we bring it into the self, and yeah, to extend grace where we can't quite understand it. Maybe we don't relate, maybe we can't see how we reflect. I often find myself getting irked with people who like are inconsiderate, and who are, where I'm like overly considerate or overly responsible, and like, I get, sometimes I'll get irked with like the amount of litter I see in the world. I walk my dog every day, and I pick up every litter I come across, until it starts to get to the degree where like I'm like bitter about it. If I could do it lovingly on behalf of Gaia, and because that's part of the world I want to see, then I do it. But as soon as I get like, then I then I give myself some grace there. And it's
yeah,
funny
because
because my guides are like,
what Robert E. Grant would say about that. If the
mm,
litter is triggering you and you're
mm,
judging the
yeah,
litter, it's going
exactly,
to keep being there for you. When
yeah,
you can stop
mm,
judging it, then you'll
yeah.
find that the litter won't be there anymore.
And that's funny because then, because my guides had me sit on this park bench and stare at some cigarette butts and litter on the ground, and just stare at it until I could find the beauty in it.
There you
And
go.
And so I sat there and I stared and I stared and I stared and I stared and I stared. And then finally it was like the softening, the softening, the
Yeah,
softening, the condemnation, also the grief, the grief were like things I find sacred. You know what I mean? Things I find sacred is often not upheld in the way that I want to see. For even for like landscape gardening or whatever, like I could hear the trees screaming when they're not honored or at least given a heads up, like, hey, we're gonna remove some branches or whatever. That's like we're just doing things in a way that's so unconscientious, but just to bring that through the love portal back. And then it was funny, after I did that technique, I'm walking back and there's a community of people that all had little like garbage bags and picker uppers, and they're all cleaning up garbage on the
there
street.
you
And like I
go.
wanted to go thank them, but I couldn't, like my face was wet. I was just crying about it. But it was so like, see, other people are doing it too. Be in correspondence with the change you want to see. Don't engage with the change you don't want to see, because when we're judging something, we're matching its energy. If we're fighting something, we're matching its energy. So that just actually builds what we don't want. So when we kind of like, when we rise above it and we do the Buckminster Fuller quote, as I spoke about, you know, we can't fight the change by, fighting against it, or we can't, we build the new change by building new, and then that renders the old obsolete because there's a better pattern in
Exactly.
place.
And you've
Yeah,
got the lovely adage of what you resist persists. And so
exactly.
it is
Yeah.
about seeing the beauty in it. Um, because I mean, I can understand you wanting to pick it all up. I had the same taking my dog for a walk. It wasn't so much the litter, it was the dog turds that people weren't
Oh yeah.
picking up. And I was like, why aren't they picking it up? They should pick it up. And then I was using
Hmm.
all my poo bags, as we call them, to pick up other
Yeah.
people's. And I had such resistance, and it was like
Hmm.
the next time I went, all I could see was dog turds because that's the way it works. But if you can see
Yeah.
the
Yeah. It
beauty, and
amplifies.
how can you see the beauty in a dog turd? Yeah, easily. It's nature.
Mm.
I'm having gratitude because that dog went
Mhm.
over there on the side of the path and it will break down and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what story you give yourself. It's about releasing all stories. It's about not judging. And
Yeah.
we've got the judgment card. And one of the reasons that I think the judgment card is the penultimate major arcana is because for
Mhm.
me, releasing our judgments is probably the last spiritual lesson, right?
Yeah, 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 totally. And there's one side of it where like discernment keeps us safe, and that's true, but a lot of times, like when there's judgment and condemnation and finger wagging and like blah blah blah, it comes just from the head, and that's why we need to run it through the heart, because like the head operating system is uh polarized, hence the two hemispheres. The heart is a multi-dimensional translator, and as a different operating system, it's not programmed with the same way. So we run a whole different energy, and where the heart is relating all my relations and wants to come into right relationship, and incoming in right relationship is not just talking, like the head just never shuts up. The heart listens, and when you listen in the heart, you're willing to hear where the other what are you going through. I just noticed you litter that cigarette butt, like what is this person going through. And then sometimes, if you're empathic or intuitive like me, all of a sudden you get a download like, oh my gosh, they're in a divorce, and like they don't like where their children's bedroom is at the new place. It's by the furnace, or what I mean. There's all the details come, and you're like, oh man, of course they're not conscientious of that, because they're so grieving, and they're feeling so helpless. And I'm not helping them change frequency also by like wagging my finger at them. I gotta hold them in wherever they're at, to the degree that they feel honored and where they can kind of transcend that. I was just
Yeah,
listening
and
to
you're
a lot
hitting
of.
on a really important point here, Raya, because
Yeah.
when you say, I'm going to hold them in a more loving, thought,
Mm,
but actually, what you're doing is you're holding yourself in a more loving
mm,
thought because
oh,
judging other people feels icky, whereas loving other people feels lovely. So it's you
yeah.
that you're holding space for, right?
Yeah, and my guides actually said something along that line too. When I was like bitching about something someone was doing, I'm like, meh, 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 meh. They're they're like, your subconscious can't differentiate between people. So when you bitch about someone else, it's no different than self-criticism. I'm like, what? Like record scratch, like what? So I'm internalizing all that negativity I'm spewing. And if you play like Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing, and you do a kind of like you cast a spell with other characters, there's an area of effect. And so when we're like spewing negativity, it's kind of like peeing in the swimming pool. We got an area of effect that we're kind of sitting in, and it kind of poisons around us. And it's not specific, so we're not just sending arrows like bit 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 to that one person. It's sending arrows all around. So like
It's
you're
coming
sending
through you.
negativity. Yeah, you're sending negativity to that beautiful rose bush or those children playing at the park that may not have psychic defenses yet, or even worse, the newborn in the baby carriage. So like we have to become way more conscientious with what we're putting out and uh shift that. And that's part of the legwork of like walking the talk and doing as we have received insight towards. It is paying attention when our unconscious mind will just do that and we'll be like, oh, and then stop it. They say it's a great neutralizer too, if we're thinking like one bad thing, to like say it with a neutralizing opposite, just so it kind of like neutralizes that, and then from there do something else. And it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, because you could use your imagination. What would it feel like to feel the opposing thing? And then it's like spell work, right? Abracadabra, I create as I speak, I create as I think. And that's another thing with why light language is so beautiful, because it bypasses the conscious mind. So in the conscious mind, we have a whole bunch of resistances to things that, we're like, I don't know about this and blah, blah, blah. And all that's great. Everybody has to take their own time with the process of realization so they can ground each aspect and not kind of get blown into into infinity. But um, the light language brings about the kind of like the new templates, from a variety of different sources that kind of gift us with the instruction manual of how to overcome certain issues or ailments. And from there, it's more of a full-bodied approach where you can feel different aspects of it moving in your body, and where it speaks to the heart and the gut mind too, I find, because I feel like that's a way to, if we really want to practice discernment on a way that is um, actually helpful for our own safety and self-preservation, bring it to the gut, because the gut knows immediately. The gut will you know through pendulum work, we'll get a yes, which is like a back and forth for me, and that's like nodding, and that's like bringing into the energy field. It's safe. When you get a no, it's like back and forth. It's like no, not in my energy. It's a line. It's a boundary. That brings me to the Ace of Swords, the line drawn in the sand, the both sides of the sword, right?
I
Yes.
was going to ask
So
you
it's
about that. I was going to say, I want
yeah.
to hear what you want to say about this one.
Yeah, yeah. The sword is the protection, but it's also, in some ways the swords are the mental body. The swords can also be the tongue, where like the words can wound, and that's something I've had to be really conscientious of. I've a very high air and water dominant in my chart. I don't know if you noticed, not a lot of fire and not a lot of earth, but there's some. Anyway, with the swords, I've had to learn to be very, very careful, because learn in my childhood, my parents were very, very, very highly critical. Very, very knight of swords. Could cut strips off you. Like especially my dad, very, very perceptive, very intuitive. Hone in on that, just tear people apart, and like awful, awful. But at the same time, that could be used to heal. So I worked shamanically, and the guide that came up was the great white shark. And the great white shark, as you know, it could smell like a microfraction of, blood in the water from miles away, and it can hone in on the point of injury. And so, should that skill be used, predatorily, as it is by some in the community, um, it can do harm. But at the same time, it could be a really exact measure of healing could be found when we get to that pinpoint where we can bring in the new patterns from the inside out, and that fractal pattern billows outwards and creates the new field. But yeah, wounds can harm, words can heal. To be conscientious of that, and to bring back the new sound patterns, the new cymatics. There's was an interesting light language gem that I was having with someone who found themselves speaking ancient dialects, actually, that it corresponded to Vedic uh, linguistics. and it corresponded to, I'm not thinking of the right term for it right now, but like mantras are, I'm not, yeah, that language. Anyway,
I want to
but
ask you though,
if you,
when you do your light language, sorry to,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
do you know can you translate what you're saying? I understand it's a
Um,
frequency experience, but sometimes people can translate what's coming through.
when I tune in for light language, I get little blips of it. I get mostly visuals, to be honest. It's mostly visuals, and I can explain the visuals, but honestly, when I translate it into words, it almost hurts because it feels like we're putting something vast into a cookie cutter,
Yeah.
and it feels like it's dissecting some of it. So
You're
it's like it
lowering it.
can translate, but not directly, and we're missing the mark a lot. There's a lot lost in translation. Where like yeah, there can be themes, for example, but there can be themes, but that they're way more all encompassing that our consciousness can hold, you know? And I found that with channeling certain beings too, in in conversations with certain celestials, for example, it feels like I'm moving from a fishbowl into the ocean in terms of the vast field of consciousnesses. You know, there are beings out there who like we have our alphabets and our understanding of mathematics and calculus and you know that sort of thing. That's just a micro fraction of their capacity to understand. So we're working on a limited bandwidth that is expanding, and in that expansion, we have to recognize all that we know and all that we don't know and allow everything that we do know to be rewritten if appropriate, especially pertaining to our history. You know, that's a other thing too that corresponds to the genetics that are being activated in this time, also corresponds to the Judgment Awakening card, you know, coming to life, new genetics, you know, new DNA strand, new,
Mm.
the nadis are opening to have new cities, the new gifts, skills, and abilities, you know, from the uh, biology, from the ancestry, as well as from the soul memory, all converging in this beautiful, beautiful new arrangement where each person is different and where each person too in communal form they balance the community. There was a time when organically the different communities that were present organically would have, you know, a medicine person in there would have, you know, someone skilled with this, and where the community was balanced out, and then those that would travel, but where none was left lacking. And that's similar to like how, you know, the what's grown on Gaia is a medicine that we need. You know, there's plenty of dandelions because we all need to clean our livers and our blood. You know, red clovers. She's growing what we need. You know, just like a mother whose breast milk adapts to the child. Exactly. You know, it's very specific to that child, to their specific needs. Gorgeousness there.
I
You
heard that
know.
if you I've never tried it, but if you suck a seed
Oh, I've heard that
and
too.
then plant it, it
Yeah.
will grow with the nutrients that you specifically need because it's got your
Yes. Yes.
DNA on it.
Yeah, totally. At the our eco village, there was a human compost toilet, and they called it they called it the bank where everybody made their deposits. And while and in meditation there, because it was very very clear there, there wasn't like electro smog or anything. Plus, this was like you know, oh my gosh, getting close to 20 years ago now. Anyway, but when yeah, when people would you know deposit into the earth, it was kind of like you know the technology of those Japanese toilets that will read you know your excrement to tell you where you're nutritionally depleted and what you know what you need to know or do in order to correct that. It's earth does that naturally, and that way too, that like everything we're seeing coming up in technology is a reflection of what we can do, but our biology can do it better. That was part of the Atlantean gifts lessons. You know, the ways in which we went off balance there was the off balance in technology and our biology, where yeah, we can be inspired to know that we can activate gift skills and abilities in an organic way and um not be so glamorized by the uh potentially toxic mimic that is available. Where of course technology has its place and its space, and like anything is neutral and can be used for good or bad, you know, so that's why you have to be conscious in interaction with it, be in right relationship with that, you know, that sort of thing, and don't allow it to atrophy your own gift skills and abilities, like you know, um, keep your creative potentials fresh and do those by hand is what I would suggest too. But you know, at the same time, like this is meant to reflect, to show us like what we can do better because we're divine design, you know.
Mm.
And yeah, that's a
You, one of the
very
things that
ancient
you
phrase.
Sorry, one of the things that you say, one of your phrases, which I really like, is you say to be in right relationship with. And I love that phrase. But can you expand on that? And if what does that actually mean? And how can somebody know when they're in right relationship
Mm,
with something, whether it be their
mm,
diet, their environment, their relationships?
mm,
How can
mhm.
people know?
Yeah, right relationship is what I in this lifetime I learned it through the study and practice of shamanism and animism, where all is God, all is God, and in that way all is revered and to be respected. Everything, the creative energy that got put into building materials for this table, for example, that is, a condensed version of the same, you know, the same waves and particles that make up myself or anything else. There's just varieties of densities, you know and so in that way it's a reverence, not just for like what it is, but like how it was made and what was put into that and that sort of thing. So much is askew when we have that kind of understanding in terms of like how everything is, and that's invitation towards bringing it back. And really the right relationship is um it's, I don't know if it's easily defined, but on an energetic level it is coming into balance and harmony. It is coming into coherence, not where there has to be sameness. Unification does not mean homogenization. We weren't meant to experience a process, Carl Jung calls individuation. That's to like fully realize your pure authentic self. That is not to be, that is the pure expression of divine in your form. And God came into the variety of forms in order to experience the variety, not to experience sameness. So we don't have a good concept of that in terms of our human understanding of it. But where we come into a respectful place, and where we are listening to what's needed, where we don't just take, we ask permission, even if it's engaging. If I'm walking in nature, if I'm walking by a tree, I greet the tree and I ask the tree, can I come into your field of energy, before I just come and like, soak up the tree energy. And that way you're just kind of asking, and that way you're not assuming any sort of entitlement of anything or anyone else's energy. And two, in working with that, whether I'm working with different shadow aspects of myself through um, journey work, sorry about that. My dog has something to say, but I ask, what do I need to know or do to be your friend? And then I learned, oh, I need this, this, and this, and this. Like one of my shadow aspects once was like, I need soup. I need soup. I want to eat soup. You have to include soup in your diet in order to feed me and to keep me happy. I'm like, okay, cool. It might not be what we expect. We have to learn to adjust, how to come into conscious compromise, you know, and to learn how to. And I think that will become more and more natural as we have expanded our consciousness. It'll just become more natural to us that we will be more considerate. We will be more reverent. We will take much more greater care. That's something that's come under attack from humanity for uh, those that don't wish our sovereignty, for example. Part of the up to no gooders and the
Up to no gooders. I like that.
yeah, some of the rituals they do is called the cremation of care. They want to
Oh,
atrophy our hearts and that we care.
yes.
Listening listening to Martin Pritchell's book on grief and praise. I think it's The Smell of Rain on Dust, and gorgeousness there. He speaks of the ways of grieving of his cultural my as a Mayan, I believe he's a shaman elder, how they grieved and how that's missing, and that level of care is so required, to see our dead through to the other side. And that's, that can get into a whole nother topic, but the return of the heart, the return of full sensory feeling is something that my guides say often too, is like to recognize your aliveness in every sense of the world. And that's coming into full presence, where you are fully alive, and where too, when you're in that full presence, when right relationship, I think, can actually be defined as where if you did harm, you would immediately feel it, and you would feel the correspondence of that pain within yourself, because there's no differentiation. and that too, like where I pick up litter, I pick up litter because the external is a extension of my own self. So it's my personal self hygiene. I'm gonna shower and brush my teeth and pick up some litter. It's done as this um is this recognition of that. And I feel like once we get into that heightened sense of sensitivity around that, and we can immediately feel the repercussions of our own actions, it will become it will become second nature to not act in ways that are harmful. And we won't even have to like take so much effort in listening and understanding, where it'll just become like easy, effortless.
Mhm.
It'll just be the new standard.
I
And
think
that
that's
is a
quite common, isn't it? And I've
yeah.
often thought that when following our intuition, we often don't acknowledge that it's our intuition because we just think, "Oh, I had a
Mm,
good idea," yeah,
yeah.
um, and but I think we notice our intuition more when we go against it. I know
Mm,
for me, I've had a couple of experiences where I went against my intuition, and boy, did I feel that.
yeah.
And so I think often that's sometimes a way to guide us as well, isn't it?
Oh,
If it feels
totally.
icky, it's not
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, exactly. That brings it into the discernment thing too, because the ick is the disgust. And a lot of people, especially, I want to say especially women, but because we're meant to like bypass our disgust and just kind of like be, smile and be polite and, not, ignore our own felt body senses, ignore our intuition, go, with the societal norms and such, because disgust biologically shows us what's not safe for us to eat. If we are foraging in a forest and we eat a berry and discuss that's not healthy for our body. There's something in it that either is not good for us, or could even be poison, or could be rotten. I use that even in discernment on the other realms when I'm interacting with new guides. I'll do a smell check. I'll call it. So if I smell and then if something smells off, then I'll say, "Show me your true form." And then they may have been cloaked in something other than who they were in the cosmic dressing room.
Wow.
But yeah, the disgust is a very, very important thing to learn. It's our body's discernment. It's something that feels off, and we should always, always trust that. But we do learn through contrast. Even the other day, I felt like, oh, I need to put more poop bags in my fanny pack before I walk my dog. And then, like, I didn't do that. I'm like, oh no, I'm in a rush. And I went, and then the poop bag broke and got, crap on my hand. And then I'm just like, yeah, anyway.
But I'm often applying that as well to because anyone that knows me knows that I'm very passionate about teaching the sway test because it's so
Oh yeah,
life-changing.
yeah.
And sometimes the movement forward can be really quite slight.
Mm.
And so I usually for practicing purposes in the workshops, I've got a packet of old cigarettes. Um, and so that when people hold that, they go backwards
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
clearly. And so very often, that's why it's so important to do a base test, isn't it? Because you
Hmm.
might not feel yourself going forward, but you definitely feel yourself going backwards. So at least you've
Hmm.
got that contrast in order to use as your guidance with that.
Totally. And we're not going to get it 100% right, because everything we've learned, some of these skills have been atrophied. So we've got to like be patient with ourselves. A lot of the time I find people have all these like huge standards for intuitives or whatever. Oh, you're not getting this right, blah blah blah. And then I worked with a teacher who was really, really high in her field, and she was like, yeah, I'm like 30 to 40% right, and I think that's pretty good. And I was like, you know because yeah, we don't expect an Olympic athlete, for example, to get high all the time. Every once in a while they hit the mark, and we celebrate that, but we don't apply that to intuition, where we're developing that. And as we develop it, like anything else, repetition gives you mastery. So you figure it out and you learn through contrast. You figured out when you like don't listen to your intuition, you get shit on your hand when you're walking your dog. And then you're like, oh man. But then the gift in that is not to beat yourself up about it. Be like, oh well, this is why to listen. Next time I'll take the time and to slow down, you know, pace myself before I waste myself, listen to my intuition, check in, is there anything I need to know or do, and then from there move along. forward. The amount of electromagnetics in the world can be very disorienting to people who have a hard time grounding like myself. So like for me, I find like it's easier to hear and to check in when I'm grounded and plugged in, because it kind of creates a circuit where I can discharge the additional electric and then kind of come into the coherence. And luckily my guide said that the frequency with the most amplitude will entrain other frequencies, but the trick is to hold it with your point of focus. And that's another thing that's been under attack with humanity lately. Our solar plexus chakra corresponds to the triangle, the fire element. When we make decisions, when we are decisive, when we can hold our point of focus, if we hold it long enough, it does start to change. So it's just a matter of practice, holding the frequency until the frequency being met by form, and the form changes,
Yeah.
and we do see that too. If like those of us who've done great work around belief systems, we clear a belief system where we used to constantly find, like you were saying, like all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of shit everywhere when you walk your dog. I had that same thing where like I had certain, beliefs about men, and then healing that, all of a sudden I found kind and wonderful, generous, compassionate, open-hearted men who, were giving, and weren't, you know what I mean? It was just a whole new octave. So it was a whole new kind of world and paradigm once we kind of reconcile and are willing to kind of loosen the constraints around the belief systems too. A lot of people take shit so seriously. They're like, this is the way it is. But if you just like laugh at it a little bit and realize it's kind of ridiculous.
I think it's, yeah, like laugh at it and also not to be attached to it. This is coming up a lot.
Exactly.
It's okay to have
Yeah.
judgments, it's okay to have thoughts, it's okay to have
Yeah.
beliefs, but it's about not being attached to them. It's that
Yeah.
rigid attachment that is stopping us from
Yeah, like
evolving.
totally. There's this one time I was in such a crap mood. I was like blah blah blah, like telling myself the same story over and over again, blah 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 blah. And finally, I get clear for a minute. It's usually like when I'm doing chores and I have my hands in the dishwater, and I can hear my guys are like, dang, they're like, Rhea, there is a library of frequencies available to you. Why are you choosing this one? I'm like, oh yeah. And then I turn on some music and I just dance that out. I'm just dancing it out, and then I'm like wafting it in the different directions. And then I'm in my center point, and then I'm spinning, and then I'm joyful. And then I can go pick up my kid from daycare, and be loving with him, for our meal and our small time together in the afternoon. It just shifts the whole dynamic of everything. And it's just, yeah, giving that grace and that allowance, allow things to be different, and if rather than condemning the ways when we notice when things are different, or when we notice when we're behaving in ways that aren't necessarily conscientious or high vibe or whatever, it's giving ourselves grace and just being like, well, that was silly, what can I do that's better? It's not being like, oh, that was bad and I'm doing this again and I can't get over this and blah 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 blah. No, 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 stop. I always got to be stop, quiet, still. What else? What else is there? Oh, there's something else. Oh, I can imagine what it would feel like to be, adventurous and to be curious and to be playful, and from there too, the states of I was in before kind of seemed funny to me.
Exactly.
Not in a mocking way, but just in a like, oh, that's kind of silly way. There's a lot of ways in which and that brings us to the page in the reading again too, like the things that we learned in childhood that we just don't even question, and that become like these racetracks of thoughts that just go on over and over and over and over and over again. Like a little kid who like doesn't think Santa Claus will find their house because they moved, and you just go to be like, oh, honey, of course Santa will find us. He's a magical being. He knows where you are. He knows where everyone is. That kind of thing. Where we're just like, this is silly. There's something more expansive, more life affirming, more connective, more joyful that is available to us. Yeah, and that's the
Mm.
that that even like brings us to the Ace of Swords, the new thought paradigm applied through joy, applied through right relationships, collaboration over competition, collaborative momentum.
Collaboration.
Yeah, new
Collaboration with
communication.
fun.
Yeah, exactly. The Aquarian energy being the humanitarian energy, where the Aquarius are the weirdos. I've got my South Node where the North Node is now, so I know all about being a
Oh,
weirdo,
you've got
man.
them in.
Yeah, and that's
Wow.
recognizing the individuation as a specific requirement of unification, not to assimilate or homogenize. That's a misunderstanding, you know. But yeah, the whole applied everything. But I will bring through some light language now if that's appropriate. Yeah, we're
Thank
gonna
you.
we're gonna connect in, of course, for the highest good of all, requesting assistance from the beings of the highest frequencies of light and love, all others we bind from us. We ask for a sublime summary of all that has been discussed in a way that is easily digestible, easily applied, practical, helpful, loving. Karamarato, uplifting, encouraging. Kiamayatsayo, komayo satsayo, komayo satsayo, komaye siara, komayo satsayo, komaye siata. Kumayo satsayo kumaye siasa tarataro tokoya maya ya ya ya. There were times in human civilizations where we greeted all of creation with a song every morning and every night. Korataya kama aya shatsa. And that's a way to come into conscious relationship. It is doing dedicated acts of service and feeding that which you want to see, feeding and appreciating. Karama aya ko amaye kitia. Kurta aya sama aya kim aya shatsa kurtia ama katene kichina katoya katima ruta tataya samana. Horatakaya kamanaya sa fun I shatsa kiet sit ord omkwa om kiet soroto koyesha marata korot omoyosutso. You have more than enough and you have become exactly who you need to be in this moment. Allow yourself to recognize the progress that you've made. The card of celebration was also a card of recognition of this progress from the other realms who are cheering you on. Allow yourself to open to the reception of all the gifts available to you through the central channel. You are a divine being of light, a creator within your creation. Allow yourself to play with that creation, not in aversion to what you don't want, because that's got a stinky energy there, but in a curiosity as how wonderful can things get? Life, universe, source, creator, I invite you to show us how good things can get. How good can things get? Opening to the miraculous. Surat amaya katsanyi. Haye shat surato amaya shatsa. I have a guide called Grandfather Dragon who comes in requesting a kind of a funny voice, so I'll let him come in just with a bit of an introduction. He's a bit intense, but he's a great clarifier and protector of all sacred life. The wings that you have appreciated and utilized in other incarnations are beginning to open again, allowing you to soar to greater heights and to glean from greater perspectives, to grasp the bigger picture of all, which grants us the ability to appreciate even suffering as a gift.
Oh.
And from that, we come into closure with it. And from that, all things are made new.
Raya, I absolutely love your light language, and it makes me feel really emotional. And that's because that's my second time today, of course, because I have had a private session with Raya. I just want to say that. And I highly, highly recommend it because, you know, how touching is it to have that private light language along with the galactic astrology, along with your vast knowledge your massively open heart and your enthusiasm and your motivation. And I have to say, and it came up in my reading for you, this overwhelming love that
Mm,
you have for all of humanity. So Raya, tell us, for anyone that wants to contact you to book a private session, tell us where they can contact you, please.
sure. I'm primarily on Facebook. My personal account is Raya Elise, Raya Elyse. My business account is Infinite Heart Nature. I have a Facebook page I haven't maintained, but you can reach me pinned to the post, the top post on my Facebook is a little bio and ways to reach me, including my Gmail for business, which is infiniteheartnature@gmail.com. Um, and yeah, or message me on Messenger and I'll respond and we can book and we can go over the dynamics. And yeah, I work best with those who take personal responsibility for where they're at and
Of
are willing
course.
to take positive action on behalf of the good of all and the good of themselves. So that's who I jam with too. And to shine the light of recognition and thanks and appreciation back to you, Deborah. Uh, Coming through your reading, you are a pillar of the new paradigm consciousness. You are boots on the ground, profound spiritual applied insight who actually, not only with your gracious, glorious, grand, giving heart, your generous heart. This you have applied it in a way where you have metabolized the spiritual teachings to a real simple, gorgeous ways that I'm certain are delivered in your books and through interactions with you that can really help to reconcile the overwhelm of the awakening experience to create a sense of safety and being held within that and to just guide lovingly for the next steps forward. You are so needed and appreciated, and it makes my heart so happy to know that you're out there doing work like this. Because
Ditto,
yeah,
ditto, ditto. My new friend Raya, ditto, ditto, ditto. I'm gonna put your email address in the description as well because some people are not on Facebook.
so
Um,
yeah,
so they can email you, but those on Facebook, I'll put your Facebook links in as well. Well, we know that you and I could talk forever, so
true.
we need to stop it at some stage, don't we?
Yeah,
But we could always do this again. It's
fantastic. Love
we
that.
could do another reading, and it will give
So
us
much fun.
more fodder to share and to discuss. And I just love having these conscious conversations. So
Me too.
thank you, Rhea.
Thank you.
Is there anything you want to say or share before we say goodbye?
Oh man, this was so much fun. I had a blast. Thank you. And thanks for whoever else is participating and enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed this party, this, all this and more. All this and more. This is the taste of things to come. I feel like what we accomplished here today was really an uplifting and a little taste, little speckle of just how good it can get. You know?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. Thank you so much.
Same.
So thank you so much to Rhea. Thank you to anyone that's got to the end of the video. And bye and lots of love to everyone. And I'll see you in the next video. So bye for now.